Hey everyone, welcome back to The Mind of Thomas. Just recently, it was reported that the Nintendo Switch system just sold over 79 million units. It's great seeing Nintendo succeed making games for this console that I love, especially when just a little over 4 years ago, they were struggling with one of their biggest failures, the Wii U. But what if the Switch didn't exist, and instead Nintendo's efforts were redirected towards developing games for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC? What if Nintendo went third party? Nowadays, it would be very hard to imagine Nintendo going this route. As I stated, the Switch is doing remarkably well, and the company is seemingly thriving in the hardware business. But back in the Wii U days, and even sometime before in the GameCube era, the talk around this scenario was a lot different. After all, Sega had done the same thing after the failure of their last console, the Dreamcast, and had found success making games for their former competitors. But Nintendo was resilient, and went ahead to make their next system better than ever, putting everyone's worries to rest. In today's video, however, I wanted to explore just what I think a third-party Nintendo alternate reality would have looked like. And editor's note, I'm not sure why this reality distortion effect keeps appearing when I talk about this, but it fits with the alternate universe vibe of the video, so cool. So, without further ado, let's begin. Around 2014, when Nintendo realized it was clear there was almost no chance of saving the Wii U, they got started on laying the groundwork for their future strategy. In our universe, this would go on to be the Nintendo Switch, with a side offering of mobile games here and there. However, in this reality, a different decision gets made. It's time to go the way of Sega and become a third party, but with a Nintendo twist. You see, around this time when the late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata was asked about the possibility of Nintendo going third party, he responded that he felt if this were to happen, Nintendo would lose part of its identity in the process. And that's what leads me to believe the company wouldn't have simply settled on releasing their planned Wii U and Switch titles as standard PS4 and Xbox One games. They would have wanted to make sure that Nintendo still kept the image of being their own beast, while now inhabiting the ecosystems of other platforms. So, to the surprise of many, Nintendo announces their future plans in 2016, around the same time the Switch would have been announced in our timeline. Starting from around then, the Wii U would be discontinued, and all future games would be released for Xbox One, PS4, and Steam. However, many would also be caught off guard with the announcement that these games would not be playable with each system's respective controllers or a keyboard and mouse. Instead, Nintendo-published games would require the use of the all-new Nintendo Joy-Con controllers. Yes, these would be virtually identical to the Joy-Cons of the Switch, but without the rail attachment. This would ensure that even on a console not their own, Nintendo would still have complete control over the way they design their games. The Joy-Cons would be sold for a steep price of $90 but would come bundled with a collection of NES and SNES games to sweeten the deal, and also to drive the point to the masses that this was the key to the world of Nintendo. The controller bundle, along with the 3DS family of systems, which Nintendo would have continued to sell, similarly to how they kept it alongside the Switch for the first few years of its life, would have carried the company through the 2016 holiday season, with the NES and SNES nostalgia creating a demand for the controllers similar to that of the NES and SNES Classic Edition systems. Later, in 2017, Nintendo would have started to release a complete lineup of games using the controllers, starting off with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, now releasing as a multi-platform title. In fact, most of the first-party games from the Switch's launch year would have followed, with the exclusion of 1-2 Switch, most likely. The next few years would have followed suit, being very similar to what we now have on the Switch. However, without the merging of Nintendo's home console and handheld ecosystems, the 3DS would still live on alongside Nintendo's multi-platform offerings, gaining more and more exclusive games to itself, including downscaled versions of Pokémon Sword and Shield, with the mainline Pokémon titles never making it to home consoles. Eventually, Nintendo would have followed the 3DS up with a complete successor, branded the Nintendo 4DS, forever continuing to make dedicated handheld systems alongside their offerings on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Ultimately, with the hype of what would have been the Switch's lineup on those systems, Nintendo would have still been relatively successful on this route, although never reaching the entire crowd of those systems due to many being unwilling to use their proprietary controllers. So, in the end, despite dropping out of the home console race, Nintendo would have still been Nintendo, and while a lot would have changed, the core of what makes the company so endearing and special would have always been there. Well, that about wraps up my dive into the alternate reality where Nintendo went third party. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a big fat thumbs up and subscribe for more epic videos like this one. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.
Sir, we have a situation.
What seems to be the problem?
This was just spotted on the web.
But what if the Switch didn't exist? And editor's note, I'm not sure why this reality distortion effect keeps appearing when I talk about this, but it fits with the alternate universe vibe of the video, so cool.
Sir, if signs of this continue...
I know. We need to keep an eye on the kid, and double our security efforts. Make sure no one else knows about this.
Understood, sir.